Hello everyone, dear students. So once again to all, welcome back to all my favorite students. In this lecture, today we are going to discuss about, learn about a very important poem. The poem name is "Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening," which is composed by Robert Frost, which is very famous poem and which is very significant poem. Among all the poems, so this is one of the best poems of American poet Robert Frost. So without waste of time, so we have to start our today's special lectures on stopping by woods on a snowy evening. So let's start right now. So, dear friends, if we understand, if we talk about the poem, so just we understand. So, what is the publications? So, when did poem published? So, these things we must know about that poem. Okay, the first poem it is published in 1923. Okay, in this poem, so what we will discuss in this poem there is some key points to be discussed in this poem. In this poem, a traveler pauses alone in a snowy forest, filling its quiet pool. So in this poem, we can understand there is a traveler. Okay, there is a knight and who is traveling alone on his horse. His little horse is very stranger thinking, very different kind of. So that time he goes through the forest. The forest is stopping by woods on snowing because forest is very dark, lovely, and with the fields of snowy. All these and that time is evening. Okay, so this is how he is torn between the woods and deep attractions and the journey ahead. Okay, the weight of his obligations finally turns him back towards home. So finally, he decided, I will not stop here because I have some responsibility, and that's why I want to go. So that's why the last line always suggests that the I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep and miles to go before I sleep. So this is how the poem. It is very incredible. It is very natural poem. It is very temptation poem. So let's we just move ahead. So before start the poem, we understand. So what about the Robert Frost? What about the we can say that poet? Because poet, if we know about the poet's background, if we know about the poet information, then we can understand what is exactly and how which type of poet, which type of poets style, which type of poet. So how what are the themes of poet? So that time we understand, and that's why we are going to poet. Robert Frost, the voice of rural America. So Robert Frost, also known as the voice of rural America. So he also arrived the voice and all these things. Okay, this is the image of Robert Frost. Dear friends, Robert Frost was a renowned American poet. His work explored complex themes of nature, human experience, and the choices people make in life. So he also composed his composed his poem based on real experiences, naturals. Okay, his poetry also talk about naturally real experiences in the human life. So how to human face the difficulties and how to overcome them. So these kind of things also he used in his own remarkable work. Okay, Frost won the four Pulitzer Prizes for his works and remained a celebrated literary figure. So he also won some Pulitzer Prize, some notable prize also in his life. So this is about the Robert Frost. So in detail, this is all about also Robert Frost. About the Robert Frost, Robert Frost is one of the most popular American poet. Okay, of time, and his highly accessible work made him famous in his lifetime and has seen solidified his place in the American literary history. So he is a very famous poet in the American society, in the American history. So that's why is the world famous also Robert Frost. So if you read the Robert Frost, they can we understand what is exactly how the poet is a very incredible poet, and so also talk about also write about nature poet. Okay, one of the best prominent poet. Okay, among his best known poems are The Road Not Taken. The Road Not Taken also the famous poem which is composed by Robert Frost. The Road Not Taken, two roads divert the yellow beach. Yellow wood. Sorry, I could not travel boat as soon as I could. So this is the road not taken. Also very famous poem. So if you read, if you go through this poem, then you can understand. So what is exactly? So how can we choose the right path? How can we go? How can we go beyond all these things? So this is very important point. So the road not taken, and this is poem we are going to learn stopping by woods on a snowy wing, which is the very world famous poem. And you can understand, when we read this poem, we totally become very motivated, very inspired. So it is very incredible, dear students. Despite never attaining the facials roles, many saw Robert Frost as an unfacial poet, one of the elite poet of his time. With his four Pulitzer Prize win, he was presented with the Congressional Gold Medals in 1962 after the spells as a consultant in poetry for the Library of Congress. Frost was an extremely prolific poet of his time and realizing a remarkable 20 poetry collections throughout his career. So his 20 poetry collections throughout his careers also we his poetry was extremely relatable and spoke on the everyday lives of those in the society, in the particulars in a rural we can say the rural rustic area, rural area, New England. So he also compose a poem based on the rural area. The people they are very rural. The people they are very ordinary people, very calm people. So his theme is always very basic themes to all the peoples, very naturally themes all the peoples. Okay, his works would addresses themes that span the human experience. So human experience, that is very key prominent eminent theme of this poet. As he lived a life of tragedy and triumph, he was well versed in of the downs of life, and which skipped into his work and gave a great balance to his poem also. So this is how we understand that his poems very famous poem, very remarkable poem, and when we learn his poem, so we totally understand so how one should have a properly responsibility in his life, her life, so we can do anything. So this is how, this is all about the Robert Frost. So okay, this is the image of today's poem. This is the knight who is rode on the little horse, and he go to his journey because he want to reach his destination, and so that's why he passes through the there is a we can say the forest. This is the forest, and through the forest when he go, and that time poet maybe thought, so he making these kind of poem. Okay, so this is night, and this is the scene of today's poem, stopping by woods on a snowy evening. So, before start the poems, we understand what is exactly key poems information. The first poems information also we talk about, that is the central theme, central message, central idea of the poem. So, what is the central idea of poem? One must remain committed to their responsibility in the face of temptation. So what is exactly here is a term is a temptation. Word come is temptation. So what is the temptation? Temptation, which means a man who is doing something, doing something, but sometimes he becomes stuck. Sometimes he becomes very seduced, very hypnotized. So one should always understand their responsibilities and do not to go to the beyond the situation. Just you follow your you should follow your responsibility, and you have to go your responsibility. Firstly you have to come, you have to do that the particular responsibility. So this is how the one must remain committed to their responsibility in the face of temptations. Okay, so this is how the poet talk about that. Who is the speaker in this poem? A traveler in the woods. A traveler in the woods who is passing through the jungle, who is passing through the we can say that forest. Woods means forest. Okay. What is the poetic form of this poem? Quatrain. Quatrain means having the each stanza there is a four lines. So it's called quatrain. Okay. Themes. So what is the themes to be we discuss? Central message and theme is very different thing, but themes talk about in this poem death, journey, and nature. So this is the actually according to all the professors and all the students can make the very different kind of things, but the particular theme is that death, journey, and nature. So this is very important theme of this poem. Which emotions are evoked? Which emotions are evoked? The emotions are bravery, confidence, and confusion also. Bravery, which means the poet talk about bravery. The poet talk about how the knight his bravery doing that things, and how he confidently, and sometimes he become confused. Okay, so this is how emotions also there. The time period of the 20th century. During the 20th century, that time this poem was composed by Robert Frost. Okay, dear friends, this is the beautiful and introspective poem that explore themes of temptations, responsibilities, and the allure of death, leaving on the readers with a sense of the peaceful contemplations. Okay, contemplations. So everybody want to understand their responsibilities and do not going to fit in that temptations. You always aware that, so what is my responsibility, what is my liability, and how can I go ahead. So this is very important things. Okay, dear friends, today just we start right now, line by line. In this first stanza, we discuss stanza analysis by analysis stanza by stanza. Okay, in this first stanza, we just understand the okay all these things, and we just start right now. Woods are whose woods these are? I think I know. Okay, his house is in the village though. Okay, he will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. So here the poet who talk about there is a there is a house. Okay, there is a house in the jungle, in the woods, and that time he stopped. Okay, he was stopping there, and he thinking about that. So whose woods these are? Okay, I think I know, and he's know already that I think I know his house is in the village though. Okay, might be his house is also maybe in the village. Okay, and there is a no any particular person here. Okay, he will not see the stopping here. So actually poet also thought about he may be not looking at me because I am stopping here, and there is a nobody there. Okay, in this woods also, to watch his woods fill up his snow. Okay, to watch his woods fill up with snow, and everywhere there is snow. Everywhere we can say that everywhere there is a snow. So that's why in this first stanza, the poet begins the poem stopping by woods on a snowy evening, with his speakers intentionally considering and analyzing the fact that these woods seems familiar to them. So just like these woods are he already seen in his life. So that's why. all these things. Technically, they are trespassing on another person's property. A forest on land that does not belonging to them, but knowing that the man want to be around for a while, the speaker can't stop themselves and from taking a few moments to watch the peaceful descent of winter and through his forest. And though they don't refer to subject, later on they understood that they share memories in the past. The poet here point that a poet also here point that to the evidence of the civilization nearby with the words house and the village. Okay, they are aware of the aware of others people, but they don't know the speaker is there. So then moreover, they are sure that the tenant didn't notice them given the heavy snowy in the thick woods. Most people remain indoors. The narrator seems to enjoy his solitary existence. So how the narrators he living his solitary existence. Okay, so this is how in this first stanza which understand we. So whose these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. Okay, he will not see me stopping here. Okay, to watch his foods fill up with snow. So this is how when the night he stopped there at the in the forest, and that time he thinking about so very differently whose house here is. I think I know. So this is how we understand in this first stanza. So how this is a particular knight who stopped there and who thinking about the somebody live here. Okay. So next stanza also talk about, okay, stanza number 2. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farm of near between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. Okay. So poets small little horse also thinking very queer which means strange, which is very we can say that very stranger, just like oh my god, what happened here? Why my knight? Why my lord? Why my master is stopping here? That's why his little horse might be very queer. Think is very queer, very strange type. Okay, and to stop without a farmhouse near. Here is no any farmhouse. Therefore, why he stop here? So these kind of thinking also doing that little horse in the little horse mind thinking is that between the woods and frozen lake. Okay, my knight, my lord, he stand between the frozen lake and woods also. The darkest evening of the year, and dear student, that is the very darkest evening of the year, that time when the knight passes through the woods jungles snowy evening. Okay, in this two stanza, the narrator draws attention to the human aspect of the peacefulness. Okay, it's interesting for the speaker to note that the horse accompanying them on there is a journey. It's able to fathom that the speaker has stopped to stare at the woods. Okay, so this is how the narrator talk about how the human perspectives, how the humans peacefully. Okay, with the praise the darkest evening of the year, it is easy to assume that this poem takes place on the night of the winter solstice, but this can also be interpreted, okay, interpreted to the refer to the more difficult times in the person's life. The darkest evening of the year could be literal, dear student, could be literal, or it could be means that the speaker is having a hard day. Okay, if so, it's all the more reasons and to stop and take a breather from the stresses that the difficulties demanded by the life, and while their horse looks on without a care in the world. Okay, so this is how the poet also understand that things. So how here a particular client and his little horse stop, and this is how they become very attracted, or they become in the temptations. Okay, moreover, the narrator seems to be a considerate characters interpreting the horse thought. The horse seems to be surprised at his sudden intermissions along the woods. Okay, dear students, as the verse indicates, the intensity of the winter cold has rendered the lake frozen, but the stubborn narrator seems to adore the immediate present as the opposite. Okay, to the imminent danger. The narrator is hinting at the immense darkness awaiting them. Okay, in the woods, night time can be extremely distracting for the weary travelers miles away from home. The speaker is torn between two choices: it again, okay, to head and home to see in the scenic view. So this is how in this stanza a particular knight who stopped there, and his little horse might be thinking that, so why my lord is stopped here without any farmhouse, and this is very darkest evening of the year. Okay, this is how in the second stanza we discuss that. The third stanza also talk about, okay, in the third stanza we just understand, he gives his harmless bale a snake, okay, shake to ask if there is some mistake. One only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and snowy flake. So okay, when the horse is shaking his neck, and okay, shaking his neck and indicate that something. So we want to go ahead because this is not our place, and because we have some work, we have some responsibility. This is the symbol, and this is the belt, harness bells by the horse to the his lord, his masters, and to ask if there is some mistake. And he might be asked, there is some mistake, I did some mistake. That's why he asked something. Okay, the only other sounds the sweep and of easy wind and downy flake, and downy flake and winds also comes and goes, and sound is coming. So this is all the scene, and this is very beauty of the nature in that poems. In this three stanza, the readers of poem should feel the same peace the narrator is describing. The narrator continue to describe the thought they believe are in the house, a mind which currently shakes its bell as is a drum along the road. The bells is a jingles playfuls indicating the house and inclinations to the live and woods for the good, which feels gloomy and solitary since the horse can't speak its mind. The narrator chooses to. Okay, the speaker, dear students, the speaker is miles from anywhere, buried deeply in the woods, and where the only sound is wind, the snowflakes falling. It is a Robert Frost imaginary at the best. The poet affirm only three sounds in the thick woods: wind, snow, and bell ringings. So this is how in this third stanza we discuss about, so how the his horse he stopped there, and how he's shaking his harmless bell, and he says that something we want to do, we want to go ahead because here is not our place and we have some responsibility. So this is how the he gives his harmless bell a shake, and to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. So this is how we discuss in the third stanza. Okay, so let's move ahead at the last stanza. That is very important, key, prominent stanza of this poem. Okay, the stanza number 4. In this stanza, the woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep. I must go before I sleep. I must go before I sleep. So this is how, dear students, you understand that in the last stanza, the poet understood that. So I should right now. I should didn't stop here. I don't stop here. I want to go ahead because the woods are lovely, dark, and deep. Because the woods are very lovely, dark, and deep, and those woods also fascinated to the temptation to the knight, and that's why knight was very seduced, very going to very hypnotized, very attracted in this during that time. So that's why he says that himself, the woods are lovely, dark, and deep. Okay, but I have promises to keep. But I have promised it to keep because I have some work, I have some responsibility. I want to achieve something in my life. So that's why he decided, and he says that. But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. So this is very incredible poem, dear students. And the last lines talk about miles to go before I sleep and miles to go before I sleep. So I want to do something. Okay, I will also fulfill my responsibility, and I will not stop here. So that's why he says that the woods are lovely and dark and deep. I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. So let's begin to explanation. During the fourth verse, the speaker make it clear, and unfortunately, peace doesn't last forever. Whatever long, dark, and difficult day prompted, this stuff in the woods didn't go away while it was being share it. And distractions are wonderful things. Anything that can keep one's mind off the troubles is a welcome addiction to any day, and but the real world still exists. Okay, the narrator, dear student, the narrator admit feelings transfixed by the woods and in enveloped in the natures. Okay, executive beauty. The points has been is a driven home already, but the speaker is getting worried as darkness down night, and they have to assume their journey through the woods are dark and enchanting in their own right. It they can also be merciless. So this is how woods are very dark and deep, and I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. So this is how the poem, very incredible poem. So I hope, dear students, you understand, you understood today's lessons. So which composed by Robert Frost, and which is very famous poem, "Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening." At the last, the woods are lovely and dark and deep, and I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. So thank you so much, dear students. So I hope you are all understand. You will also getting something from these today's videos, especially for FY, BA, BSc, BCom students, and you will also definitely get so much lesson from these today's specially lectures for you, dear students, and you will also get the good marks in your examination, and this video also help you tremendously in your upcoming examination. So thank you so much to listening me patiently. I hope you are all understand, and we will meet very soon. So thank you.